Have you ever used Brettanomyces yeast? Neither have I. As a matter of fact, I know very little, if anything, about Brettanomyces. So I'm going to do the right thing and pitch some into my beer. Hey folks, today I'm making a porter, and some folks may view porter as kind of an old school or out of fashion style of beer, but at one time, porter was the most popular beer style in the world, and one of the biggest producers of porter was Truman's in London. By the end of the 19th century, Truman had grown to be the largest brewery in the world, and porter was responsible for driving that growth. Sticking with my theme of making at least one beer from every major style that's published by Ron Pattinson, I'm going to brew an 1890 Truman Porter. Let's go to brew day. And brew day actually begins the night before. I weighed out and milled my grains, and then I set up the anvil foundry for this morning's mash-in. I set the strike temperature to 160 degrees, and I set my power at 100%. And I set the timer to turn the unit on 2 hours before I intend to mash in. With 110 household current, that's about how much it takes to reach my desired strike temperature. Since this is an historical recipe, I wanted to give Chevalier malt a try. Chevalier was used by English brewers for 100 years. It was the dominant malt from 1820 to 1920. Some describe it as Maris Otter turned up to 11.
The numbers all go to 11.
So the grain bill for this recipe is 68% or 8.5 pounds of Chevalier malt, 10% or 1 pound 4 ounces of brown malt, and 12 ounces of black malt. Plus, at the end of the boil, I'm going to add 2 pounds of number 3 invert sugar. All right, mash is complete. It's time to lift the basket, ramp the temperature up to boiling setting, and begin the next phase.
Shall we begin? Let's begin now.
All right, so this ratchet is really not doing anything at all. It's a one-to-one pull, and it's almost easier to lift it like this than it is to pull it down like that. We'll just pretend that never happened. Checking my pre-boil gravity, it looks pretty good. I'm at about 1047, maybe. But remember, I have 2 pounds of invert sugar to add at the end of the boil. So I think I'm okay. I'm not going to worry about it though. It's no stress brewing. My hop schedule looks like this. 2 ounces of Fuggle hops at 120 minutes. That's the length of the entire boil, by the way. Then 1.5 ounces at 60 minutes. And I was supposed to have 2 ounces of Hallertau Mittelfrüh at 30 minutes, but... So here's my pro tip of the day. Never go to the beer store to buy ingredients thinking that you can remember everything on your recipe list. I'm supposed to be adding 2 ounces of Hallertau hops. What did I buy? I bought Saaz. So I'm going to substitute 2 ounces of Hallertau, 6 IBUs, with 3 ounces of Saaz. 3.4% alpha acids. That'll be fine. No, it won't. So now it's the end of the boil, and time for another gravity check. I'm looking for a gravity of 1067, and I've got 1066. I'll take it. And here's where I pitched the Brettanomyces yeast for the first time. Actually, it's not a straight Brettanomyces. It's one of the newer blends that have hit the market recently. In the 1800s, porter brewers vatted their beer for up to 12 months, sometimes longer, in huge wooden vats. The resulting beer had a distinct aged taste, as they described it, as compared to a fresh beer. It wasn't until just after 1900 that brewers identified the wilder Brettanomyces yeast that lived in the pores of wooden storage vessels. So modern yeast companies are coming out with new blends of Saccharomyces and Brettanomyces to mimic what the 1800s brewers were achieving unwittingly. I chose one by Omega Yeast called Brett Blend Number 1 Where da Funk. These are sanitized, by the way, so is the pouch. Guess I should have shaken it up a bit before I cut the pouch. Let's just pretend that didn't happen. It'll be fine. It's got the lowest amount of Brettanomyces in it, and they have strains that go up to Brett Blend number 2, number 3, etc., with more and more Brettanomyces. If I like it, I'll try some of the funkier strains in the future. Now, I am going to have to take some special precautions the next time I use this fermenter with this Brettanomyces in it. It tends to linger, and if I don't clean it well and sanitize it well, my next batch of beer, whatever it may be, will have a Brett characteristic to it. So I'll worry about that later. Now, the head retention isn't anything to write home about. And the reason they use the word funk in the description is that Brettanomyces is described as having a barnyard or horse blanket. That sounds appealing, doesn't it? Or leathery characteristic. And those Brettanomyces characteristics take time to show up. Omega Yeast says that up to 3 months or longer before you'll notice the funk. My beer has been in the keg for only 3 weeks, so at the moment, it doesn't smell any different than a normal porter. It's a good porter. It is just plain good. So maybe we'll come back in a few months to see how this is aged, if it lasts. Oh, I keep forgetting. I don't have to go to the camera to turn it off anymore. I got a remote.